Chapter 44, Monday, 28th of October. Oh, how very clever of you, Constable Spofford. Bryce watched his monitors with amusement as the police officer strutted self-importantly around the little flat, checking the windows and the front doors and shaking his head. He could not find nothing wrong. He told Red, "Of course you won't. Is there any possible way Bryce could have a key?" Spofford asked her. "Good thinking, Batman, but I don't need keys. You probably don't understand that in my SAPA training in the TA, picking locks was a major part. I also had a cell buddy in the US who was a master lockpicker. There isn't any lock on any door on planet Earth I can't open within 30 seconds. Harry Houdini would have had nothing on me, but I'm not going to share this little nugget with you, am I? So do what you have to do. Fill your boots. Look important to Red. Maybe you're hoping to get a shave out of her. Well, good luck, mate. She's like one of those female Black Widow spiders. You shake her, then she eats you. You end up as a turd on her doorstep, and that's all you ever were, Constable Spofford, isn't it? A mass of dumb protein, consumed, digested, and excreted out the following day. I'll see you in hell one day. Until then, have a good time on Earth, my friend. Go on looking important, giving Red confidence. But don't imagine for one moment you're going to save her life." Chapter 45, Monday, 28th October. Clea was on the sofa in the living room area in a baggy top bra strapped down over her shoulder, breastfeeding Noah, when Roy Grace entered shortly after 7 p.m. An old episode of Miss Marple was playing on the television screen, and she immediately muted it as she smiled a greeting. Humphrey raced across to him, tail wagging madly, and jumped up. He gave the dog a distracted hug, and Clea frowned as she saw the expression on his face. "How was your day, darling?" she asked dubiously. "Down, boy," he said, then walked across, kissed her on the cheek, and gave Noah a light peck on his chubby arm. "Don't ask. Daddy's home. Noah, look," she squealed in her baby voice, looking down fondly at her son. Then she looked up worriedly at Roy. "What happened? I'll tell you when I've calmed down. I don't think it would be good for Noah to hear me swearing." He went through into the kitchen and mixed himself a larger than usual vodka martini, then downed it in one continuous gulp. He made himself another, went up to the first floor and down out into the terrace and lit a cigarette. Cassian Sodding Pugh, the biggest shit he'd ever encountered in all his 20 years service in the police force. Pugh made ACC Peter Riggs, priest of the acidic Allison Vosper, seem a saint in comparison. What the hell was going on? A year ago, Cassian Pugh, after failing to screw him, had left Success CID in semi-disgrace and limped back to his old role in London's Metropolitan Police. Now this shit was going to be his new boss. Cassian assured me he had nothing personal against you. Tom Martinson's word echoed unconvincingly in his head. This was the worst news, the worst possible news ever. He could not remember ever feeling this down. He sat on a wicker chair, staring gloomily all around him, feeling totally walled in. Transfer out of major crime, out of the job he loved so much? Hell no. He had never been a quitter, and he wasn't going to start now. He'd find a way through this. He had to. With the recent merger of Surrey and Success major crime teams, his position was already dangerously weakened, as there was currently a surplus of homicide detectives across the two countries. In a sudden flash of paranoia, he wondered if bringing Pugh in was a subtle way of getting rid of him. Was the chief constable playing games? He thought back over the past year or so. He'd had some good results, surely. Okay, the one killer had escaped possibly, or drowned in Shoreham Harbour. Glenn Branson had been shot and another officer badly injured in a previous case. Did his face suddenly not fit anymore? The only way to shore up his future was to shine, make sure he was on the police and crime commissioner's radar, make himself indispensable, but he needed something massively high profile to get his teeth into for that to happen. He didn't know yet, but he was about to get that opportunity. Chapter 46, Monday, 28th of October. The booze was helping his mood. Clea had long put Noah into his cot and was now upstairs herself. Grace sat on the sofa, eating a microwave Marks and Spencer vegetarian ravioli, and watched the news on television. "Sod you, Cassian Pugh. Mess with me again and I'll finish your career. By God, I will." There was a news item about police force cuts. The chief constable, Tom Martinson, was being interviewed and was on the defensive. Nothing would affect the frontline policing of the county, he assured his interrogator. Grace admired his strong performance. It was, and always will be, impossible to win the fight against crime. There was always going to be villains out there from every stratum of society, hurting people, destroying lives, and all too often taking lives. Making the public feel safe was a major role for the police. Reassurance such as Martinson's right now went a long way. His work phone rang, although he was getting married on Saturday because two other colleagues being away and one off sick, he was having to do a second consecutive week as the on-call senior investigating officer. He could, of course, delegate, and that was going through his mind now as he answered. Detective Superintendent Detective Superintendent Grace. It was Inspector Andy Kill, the Duty Ops 1 controller in the Hayward Health Control Room. Roy, uniform at John Street, Brighton, are extremely concerned about an individual, Miss Red Westwood. She's currently in a safe house following domestic abuse by her boyfriend, but it would seem the boyfriend has gained access. Uniform attendant and PC Spofford would like a word with you. Can I patch him through? Yes, Roy Gray said, thinking shit. He should not have had a drink while on court, but he had a plan B. There was a crack of static, then he heard a voice. Detective Superintendent Grace? Yes, tell me. Grace listened to a litany of the constable's concerns. Red Westwood's history of domestic abuse with her magician lover Bryce Lauren and his phony background, the burnt body of Dr. Carl Murphy, the fire that destroyed Cuba Libre restaurant, the fire in the engine compartment of Red Westwood Volkswagen, the fire in the convenience store, the engagement ring that was suddenly and mysteriously back on Red Westwood's finger, the appearance of the Queen of Hearts on the bathroom mirror, the certainty that this dangerous man had gained access to her secure apartment. I'm not happy with what I'm hearing, he said when Spofford had finished. I knew about the doctor's death, but I wasn't aware of the connection to the other incidents. Can you have someone stay with Miss Westwood? I'm sending someone from Major Crimes team over to you right away. I'll stay here myself, sir, Spofford said. Grace ended the call and immediately dialed Glenn Branson and gave him the details. Are you able to attend, matey? Give me half an hour. I'll see if I can get Ari's sister to come over and babysit. You're a good man. Yeah, I know. You sound pissed. I am pissed. Drinking when you're on call. If I go out, I'll arrange a driver, but for now I need a drink and I'll tell you why tomorrow. Is everything okay? Glenn asked, genuinely concerned. No, it's shit. Noah and Cleo, they're okay? They're fine, don't worry. I'll tell you all tomorrow. Chapter 47, Monday, 28th of October. Red sat on the sofa holding a glass of wine and sipping slowly, aware she needed to keep sober and alert and trying to watch the 10 o'clock news on television as a distraction. The engagement ring now sat on the coffee table in front of her, and she was tugging at the bracelet, trying to remove that too. Having lost so much weight, it was so loose on her wrist she could almost, but not quite, get it over her hand. She would definitely go to a drill in the morning. She decided to get the damn thing cut off. Out in the hallway, a locksmith summoned by PC Spofford was working on replacing the two dead locks on the front door. She could hear the constable, who was also out in the hall on his phone, talking to the skipper in the anti-victimization unit, briefing him on his concerns. After a few minutes, a locksmith, a cheery man in heavy-duty blue overalls, whose day job was maintaining the locks at Lou's prison, came into the room and handed Red 2 sets of shiny new keys. She knew she would be moving soon, but no date had been fixed and needed to feel safe in her flat. Safe from Bryce. All done, he said. I've also replaced the safety chain with a heavy one, and I've added an extra lock that you can secure when you're in here. I'll be back tomorrow at Constable Spofford's request to turn your spare bedroom into a safe room, a panic room. It will have a reinforced door and walls, and a dedicated phone line that goes straight through to the police. PC Spofford's mobile will be on speed dial. The room will keep you safe for an hour minimum against any attempt to penetrate, more than enough time for the police to reach you. Here's my card if you need me in the meantime. The name on it was Jack Tunks. Thanks so much, Jack, she said. You don't need to worry, Miss Westwood. I've been around all your windows, and tomorrow I'm going to upgrade the locks on them too. Not even Houdini would be able to get in. He assured her, totally unaware of Bryce lying watching and listening to every word from across the alley. Houdini was an old friend, Bryce said solemnly. Of course he would not have got in. Be happy in those thoughts. Despite the presence of the locksmith and the police officer, Red jumped in shock when she heard the shrill beep of the entry phone buzzer. Spofford accompanied her along the hallway. On the screen, she could see out in the street below a tall black man dressed in a bomber jacket and jeans, his head as spiral shiny as a bowling ball. She pressed the speaker button. Hello, Detective Inspector Branson from Surrey and Success Major Crime Team. he said. Come on up, she said, her voice tightens inside the second door. Thank you so much for coming. Bryce Lawrence smiled. It was all escalating nicely, all going according to plan. How rude, how different this could have been if you hadn't listened to your parents, but had just followed your heart. We could be in bed right now and making tender love with our whole lives ahead of us. Instead, you and I were both history. How tragic is that? D.I. Branson read us, opening the door to the tall, cheery-looking man. Mountain. Yep, same name as Richard, but without £1 billion in the bank, he replied with a smile. 5 minutes later, he was seated opposite her in the living room, sipping from his mug of coffee and making detailed notes on his pad. Constable Spofford, confident she was in good hands, left. Let's start at the beginning, Glenn Branson said. As far back as you like. She liked the detective instantly. He had a warmth about him and a nice energy, and at the same time he had an aura of sadness and vulnerability, as if he had suffered a personal tragedy. She told him the history of how she and Bryce had met. Then over the next hour I relayed everything that had happened, from her mother's first discovering through the detective that the entire past history Bryce had given her was false, to the events of the past week. Branson asked her if she still had the original email correspondence with Bryce from when they had first begun dating. She opened her laptop and showed him the wording of her advertisement on the online dating site. Single girl, 29, redhead and smouldering. Love life that's crashed and burned. Seeks new flame to rekindle her love. Fun friendship and who knows, maybe more. He wrote it down and looked pensive. I understand you think a number of fires in the past weeks might be linked. Yes, to this advert to my ex. It just seemed too coincidental. Each of these fires has some kind of link to me, from what I'm told. Bryce Lawrence sounds like he's pretty sick. We're dealing with someone pretty sick as we, Detective Inspector. Well, let's find out how bright you are. You ain't seen nothing yet, I promise you. Chapter 48, Tuesday, 29th of October. Matt Wainwright had just been promoted to crew commander of the Blue Watch, and this was his first shift in his new role. He had decided to arrive early to make a good impression, although the shift change was not until 8:30 a.m. At 7:30, as he headed through driving rain along the dark streets towards Worthing Fire Station, his thoughts were focused on the management of his team during the day ahead. He was also thinking about a new card trick that he had almost perfected, and how, if he was quiet, he would try it on some of the lads today. He was far too preoccupied to notice the small white van that kept a steady 200 yards behind him in the breaking daylight. He turned left, drove along the side of Worthing Fire Station, and pulled up in an empty bay at the rear. Several of the garage doors were raised, and two of the fire engines were out in the car park being cleaned by his night shift colleagues as a last duty before heading home. He took a final drag on his cigarettes, then tossed it out of the window into the tarmac. It rolled along, throwing a shower of sparks before being extinguished by the rain. One of the biggest excitements about his work was never knowing what was going to happen in 5 minutes' time. The siren might sound in the station at any moment. When it did, the officers required would be out of the common room, down the pole, into their uniform, and racing out on the blues and to within the target time of 90 seconds. In 15 years, he'd not met a firefighter who did not passionately love the adrenaline rush from riding in one of those massive red beasts, and no amount of money on earth could replicate the thrill of helming an 18-ton fire engine through a city street, together with a heightened sense of danger that so often went with it, not knowing what you would be facing at the other end. He wondered what today might bring. The majority of firefighters like himself found domestic house fires, where all kinds of different aspects of your training came into play, the most challenging and the most satisfying. Some preferred cutting people out of car wrecks, others the theatre of massive industrial building fires with dozens of crews from around the country attending. But for all of them, the most satisfaction came from rescuing people and saving lives. And there was one thing a number of firefighters had in common. Although the fire and rescue service was their day job, and the fulcrum around which their lives revolved, many of them, like himself, had second careers. He hoped that at some point he could make enough money out of his magic to do it full time. It was certainly heading that way. From the rise in the number of bookings and with 2 small children at home, his wife Sue would be a lot happier if he no longer had to work the dangerous, antisocial, and often extended hours that went with his job. Bryce Lawrence, standing in the shadows in the pelting rain, watched Matt Wainwright until he had gone inside, as then he turned his focus back to the cigarette butt on the ground. After some minutes before both fire engines were reversing to the garage and the doors closed, the rear car park was now deserted, patterned with a mosaic of lit lights from the window above. Bryce, dressed head to toe in black, strode stealthily over to the cigarette, picked it up in his gloved hand, then carefully placed it in a small plastic bag and slipped it into the pocket, then looked around and up. He took a few steps up to Matt Wainwright's Nissan, and within a matter of a second he popped the driver's door open. Wainwright had been pissing him off for the past 3 years, eating his lunch, fancying himself getting gigs he had been after, and which he would have been much better. Not anymore, dude. He slipped into the car and closed the door. Chapter 49, Tuesday, 29th of October. Good morning, old-timer. Got a few minutes? Glenn Branson said, breezing into Roy Grace's office at 7:45 on Tuesday. Then he hesitated, noticing the mug of coffee, the open can of Coke, and the blister pack of paracetamol, with most of them popped open. Roy Grace's tie was at half-mast. His normally healthy complexion was pallid, and his eyes had the telltale bloodshot look that came from lack of sleep or a hangover. Or in Grace's case right now, both. You look like shit. Thanks, Grace said, unsmiling. Seriously, I mean it. Did you have your stag night early or forget to tell me? Very funny. He stared at the DI. Glenn was wearing one of his regular sharp suits. This was a shiny brown, with a tie that could have been seen from Mars. For someone who had lost his wife less than 3 months ago, even though they were separated, he seemed to have been remarkably cheery these past few weeks. But now he had his kids, his house, his life back. Outside the window, with its view across the ASDA supermarket car park and the loading bay and south over Brighton towards the sea, the sky was a tombstone grey, and rain was falling heavily. Remember Cassin Pugh? Grace squeezed him. Lovely Cassin Pugh, he replied, the golden-haired Met officer with his rasping, nasally voice. He was second here last year and managed to upset just about everyone in this building and in Success CID. Yeah, remember him well. Unfortunately, Mr. Two-Face. Grace drained his glass of Coke and topped it up. Yeah, he was remembering him well too, which accounted for his drinking binge last night, which he was now regretting in the cold light of day. After Pugh had returned to the Met with his tail between his legs, Grace had found out that Pugh had messed with evidence on a cold case he was looking into, and he had threatened him with arrest. What he had never known, and still did not, was that Cassian Pugh had had a brief affair with his wife, Sandy. He told Glenn Branson the latest news about the appointment. I can't believe it. Pugh, Assistant Chief Constable. Yeah, well, you're going to have to believe it. Remember that movie, The Sting? Robert Redford and Paul Newman and Robert Shaw. What about it? Branson shrugged. I'll set my mind to it. We'll sort the bastard out somehow. For the first time since he had left Tom Martinson's office last night, Grace smiled. Thanks, mate. I like your attitude. Maybe I should try a charm offensive first. Got a snake charmer, have you? I should try to find one on Google. Grace grinned again, then looked serious. So you didn't come to hear my problems? Tell me. You asked me to go and talk to Miss Redwood last night, yeah? Roy Grace nodded. She's a smart lady, intelligent and rational. I'll give you the full history, and I think you're all going to agree with me when you hear that the doctor at Haywood's Health Golf Club, the burnt body and the suicide note, there might be something more going on there than we think. Meaning it might not be suicide. All the forensic evidence indicates he took his own life, Grace said, taking a sip of his coffee. He was alive at the time of the fire started. There was flame damage to his mouth and throat, and he inhaled a lot of smoke. Hear me out, Branson said, pulling out his notebook, then going through everything he written down in faithful detail. 20 minutes later, Grace scrabbled through the piles of folders cluttering his desk and pulled out one of Dr. Cole Murphy. From it, he extracted his copy of Murphy's Suicide note. Instantly his eyes went to the one sentence he found so curious. How much did this lady have to tell you about Dr. Murphy's Glen? Branson thought for some moment. Through the window, Grace noticed a police patrol car slow down, indicating left as it travelled down the hill, then turning in towards the gates of the custody centre. He caught a glimpse of 100 figures in the rear, a prisoner arrested for some alleged offence, on his way to be processed. In his gloom, Grace's thoughts momently digressed to his baby son Noah. There were so many sodding miscreants out there, and they would only ever arrest a tiny percentage. How the hell could he ever make this world safe for his child? As Glenn Branson relayed all that Red Westwood had said about Carl Murphy, Grace made notes. The doctor was a keen golfer, which fitted with his body being found on golf course, and from what little he knew of the game, Hayward's health had a high reputation. Red said he liked puzzles. Branson continued. He did the Times crossword every day. He told her proudly that his record time was just 2 minutes short of the world champion. You any good at crosswords? Grace asked him. Branson shook his head. Don't think I'm hardwired that way. Ari did them sometimes. Used to ask me for help with some clues. I never understood them except if they were to do with movies. She said I was sick. He looked and suddenly then shrugged. Yeah, she was probably right. She was a lot smarter than me. He fell silent for a moment. We did have good times before. Grace looked at him quizzingly. It was the first time in a while that his friend had mentioned his wife. Before? Branson shrugged. Before Sammy was born. That's when it changed. Suddenly I was no longer number one in her life. Don't let that happen to you and Chloe. Grace knew what he meant. He and Chloe had discussed this many times, and they both agreed that whilst the birth of Noah had changed things and they loved him truly deeply, they would always make time for each other. He nodded. We're working on it. Work on it hard, mate. Our happiness graph hits rock bottom and stayed there. It got even worse after Remy was born and Ari became depressed. He stopped suddenly with a catch in his voice, and Grace saw a single tear trickle down his cheek. He leaned across his desk and patted Glenn on his shoulder. She gave you hell that you never deserved, mate. Don't forget that. Glenn smiled and wiped away his tears with the back of his hand. Yeah, I know, but I can't help thinking back. You'd be a strange man if you didn't. Glenn nodded and sniffed. Okay, let's focus. One other thing, for what it's worth. Red said that Carl Murphy's wife, who died, was German-born like his mother. Any significance in that? Brandon shook his head. Well, nothing that she's aware of, despite his head feeling like it had been stung by 1,000 bees. Roy Grace drummed his fingers on the desktop and for some moments was preoccupied with his thoughts. I don't like what I'm hearing from you about the fires. I didn't think you would. What we have against us is the pathologist's report. But he read his thoughts. There's connection through the fires. Red Westwood is the common link in all of them. I think I'd like to get a second opinion from Jack Skerritt. Roy Grace was head of major crime and could make the decision to upgrade the inquiry into Dr. Carl Murphy's death into a murder investigation on his own. But because of his uncertainties and both the time and financial costs to the force of a full-scale murder inquiry, it was normal practice to run his thoughts past his superior, as much to cover his own back as for any other reason, particularly as he knew that ACC Cassian Pugh would be looking for any areas of judgment to give him the chance to haul him over the coals. He called Skerritt's assistant to be told he was away today, but had a 30-minute window first thing the next morning. I can take over the investigation for you while you're on your honeymoon, Glenn said. I don't want this to mess it up for you. My work comes first, Grace said. The DA shook his head. That's what screwed up your marriage to Sandy and mine to Ari. Don't let it happen to you again. We've got someone very special. You've got someone very special in Cleo. Carl Murphy was very special to some people too, Grace said. We need to find out the truth. I'm not letting you screw your life up, mate. You better understand that. Grace stepped back his friend and colleague and saw he looked deadly serious. Chapter 50, Tuesday, 29th of October. It was full daylight now, but still raining hard beneath a bitumen black sky. Back in his van, parked a short distance along from Worthing Fire Station, Bryce Laurent was glad of the cover the rain would give him. He saw the fire station doors rise moments later. 2 appliances, blue lights, strobing, sirens wailing, pulling out into the rush hour traffic. It was shortly after 9 a.m. he noticed in the front passenger seat of the second car engine the fire of Matt Wainwright, crew commander. He knew the routine. 90 seconds after the klaxon sounded in the fire station, the crew would head out, follow the instructions on the slip of paper printed on the station, and the updates in real time on the computer screen inside the cab. He enjoyed his brief time as a fire rescue officer with this crew here, but he hadn't been so happy when they sacked him. That was so totally not deserved. Matt was a wannabe magician. Lauren had helped him, shown him some of the tricks of the trade. Then the little shit had started taking some of his gigs that had to be stopped, and yes, he was going to stop this. The appliances screamed past him, and something screamed inside his head, his mother. He dug his fingers into his ears, but still he could hear her screams that night. That night, he became free. Thanks for listening.